All right, it is 1 o'clock, a touch past 1 o'clock Eastern time. First Wednesday of the month. Welcome, welcome, welcome to anybody tuning in out there to the first Wednesday of the month. Focus on training, fire engineering Humpday Hangout. My name is Brad French, on the board of directors with the International Society of Fire Service Instructors and a captain in Dayton, Ohio. Very pleased to be on again with all of my good friends on here. We're going to have some good training discussion today on using technology in fire service training. I'll start with a little bit of an apology in that my connection is probably not the greatest in the whole world, as I'm on a hotel internet connection. I'm down at the Texas Association of Fire Educators Conference down in Houston. I just got done giving a presentation down here, and so a little bit of try to you know, let go of the irony that we may have some technology issues today as we talk about technology and fire training. But as we were talking about on the lead up to this a few minutes ago with Chief Halton, just the fact that we're able to connect so easily and visually and with audio and from all kinds of different places around the world for the purposes of fire training is pretty neat all in itself. So hopefully we'll get through this without too many significant audio or visual issues and internet connection issues. Our guest today is going to be Brian Kazmierzak, Chief of Training up in Penn Township, around the South Bend, Indiana area. He is, again, somewhat ironically, I suppose, working through a few technical glitch issues with the fire engineering staff in the background. So we will we'll try to get that going here in a little bit. But as always, we're absolutely delighted to be here. I'll let all the other panelists and guests and stuff introduce themselves as we get around to our topic, using technology in fire training. But in the meantime, I want to kick it over to our chief elder, the man in charge, Chief Bobby Halton, to talk about whatever he wants to talk about. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that it's going to be something about Chief, don't you have some kind of a small event coming up in the next few months or something like that?
I have two, actually. If you'll indulge me a moment, I've got an event this month at National Harbor, which Tony will be visiting with me at, and we've got we're going to be bringing in about 8,000 folks that are medics. It's a medic convention called EMS Today, and we've got some of the best fire-based, ambulance-based, hospital-based medics in the world coming in to share their experiences. We got Donner Summers coming in from Chicago, Angie Hughes coming down from Maryland. We got Mike McAvoy, the new executive editor of GEMS, Journal of Emergency Medical Services. Mike will be speaking. You got Ricky Lasky, Ricky George. You've got all kinds of great people. Ryan Birdman Parrott's going to be doing a thing on Thursday. It's going to be just awesome. Hey, Kaz, I think we got you, man. Can we hear you, man? I hear you, Kaz. Kaz, I can hear you. We can hear you perfect, bro.
Okay, I'll talk.
There you go.
Sarah, thank you for getting me on.
There you go, man. So we got Kaz back. So anyway, we got EMS Today. It's at National Harbor. It's a really affordable event, man. It's a really cool event. We got all kinds of group pricing. If you haven't signed up yet and you're involved with training, especially if you're a training officer and one of your duties is EMS, and obviously if you're a training officer, you've got to have some responsibility as far as EMS goes. It's a huge part of what every firefighter does. So, you know, they're inexorably joined, right? We're all medics at some level in most systems. I think there's very few systems left today that don't do any EMS response at all. Matter of fact, I can't think that there are any, because that's who people are going to call regardless of whether you're trained or not. But I believe all of us are at least first responder. Most of us are basic EMT, and many of us are way beyond that. Most commonly in the Southwest and the West, Midwest, most of the firefighters are cross-trained firefighter paramedics. I know I was for almost 16 years. So anyway, it's called EMS Today. It's an amazing conference. Going to be a really good time. The Maryland Fools are going to come down. We're just going to kind of have an informal get-together on Thursday night with Ryan and all the guys from the Sons of the Flag. We've got all kinds of parties going on. Shock Fest is happening. Our good friends from Zoll and other people are putting together all kinds of deals. And National Harbor is like this really hip place, man. Like when you fly into DC, National Harbor is just across the river there, and it's got some cool restaurants. We're going to be at the Gaylord Hotel, so it's just a really cool deal. Go to emstoday.com, register. It's a great show, and every single class gives you CE towards your medical requirements. So like a cat could come to this gig and take care of their whole year just by attending the 3 days of classes there for virtually all 50 states, and it's all certified, qualified quantified by CAPC, which is the agency that takes care of all that good stuff. So that's happening. I'll be down there. That happens from the 19th through the 22nd. And Gordon Graham is doing a full day with Gordon Graham. I think it's like $100. So you get to have like a whole day with the craziest man alive. You know, and really, when you think about it, like there's always been the fool element throughout literature and psychology and religion, and they were always like the most intelligent person in the world was the craziest person, right? So in the final analysis, and it's kind of the Jesus fool thing. So anyway, Gordon's going to be doing a full day deal. It's just an amazing conference. And then in April, I'm going to be going to Indianapolis, where they're having a small get together. It's a small intimate get together. It's invitation only, called FDIC, and everybody who can hear my voice is invited. So it's really fun. Kaz is teaching. Steve is going to be there. Tony's coming to, obviously, Mayday Tony. Aaron's doing a hot class. We're trying to find a spot for Stephen to do his class and get Stephen in there teaching. Kaz is teaching. I think Kaz is doing a couple of different classes. He'll talk about that. All kinds of, you know, it's FDIC. And it's going to be just amazing. We've got some really, really, really cool stuff lined up, and some really exciting stuff that we're going to announce really close. We got some really cool people. We got a really important physicist who's coming in to talk to us about some really cutting edge research. We've got some really cool people coming in that are doing some really great stuff in terms of incident management and other good stuff. We've got everybody. Aaron Fields is going to be keynoting. Duh. You know, Paul Combs is going to be keynoting. Duh. I mean, if you don't want to hear what those cats have to say, you're not breathing. You know, you're a freaking mouth breather. So, I mean, just like the coolest cats in the world. Paul Daugherty, who's like this, he's not a firefighter, man, but this cat builds cities, and he's like totally wired. When we're talking about technology today, this cat runs a thing called DigiGroup, right? And DigiGroup builds cities, helps build cities, not towns, communities, using like the most innovative technology in the world. This cat's going to be doing a quick presentation on Thursday morning during the main program. You want to meet this cat. I mean, this is the most wired cat in the world. So he's going to be rapping. Everybody's going to be. It's Mecca, man. It's Mecca for firefighters. You know, it's been called Woodstock for firefighters, Mecca for firefighters. My buddy Tony, you know, would give me a hard time for, you know, not saying it wasn't like a Grateful Dead concert for firefighter deadheads, you know, fireheads. You know, we have our own little, you know, we have our own little cult there. So that's my wrap. I'm sorry I took so long, but they're exciting events, and you know, it's got to be on your bucket list to do it. It's just a lot of fun, and it's just a lot of fun, and everybody's welcome, and you don't have to be a member of anything, and you don't have to believe anything. You know, you don't have to be qualified, quantified. We don't have any fancy dinners for anybody. We don't elect anybody. We don't care where you come from. We don't care where you're going. As long as you're fighting fire or delivering EMS services, you're welcome. You know, if you're a cop, stay the hell out.
Well, Chief, we're certainly everybody on this panel, and I'm sure everybody tuning in today is just as excited about it as you are. I know Chief Halton oftentimes mentions a lot of the awesome events that go on with that, the 9/11 stair climb, the Courage and Valor Fun Run, and all that kind of stuff. Please make sure you're getting signed up for some of that stuff. And a quick point of personal privilege from my end as an ISFSI representative, make sure you're planning on joining us Tuesday evening for our membership social. And then also, please remember, FDIC is our home conference and where we always do our annual membership meeting. So please, ISFSI members tuning in, plan on being there Friday afternoon up in, I think we usually do it up in one of the Sagamore ballrooms, our annual membership meeting. So please make sure to be there and be a part of that. So a lot of cool things from the Instructor Society that will be happening during FDIC week as well.
You can download, Brad, they can download the app, and the meeting location and times are all in there. It's got a search bar. You can look at all the classes. You can look at all the events, Stop, Drop, Rock and Roll, Comedy Night, Fool's Bash, Union Party, all that good stuff. It's all in there. And also the IFSI social.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I tell you, I was just spending some time the other day going through my app and starring different classes that I want to take and things like that. Absolutely, a very, very useful tool. Whether it's your first time at FDIC or whether it's your 20th time at FDIC, part of the fun is trying to sit there and go through the classes and trying to figure out the impossible task of figuring out what you're going to take. There's just so much good stuff. So anyway, it's going to be a great thing. April 8th through the 13th, I believe, are the dates over in Indianapolis. So we'll see a lot of familiar faces there, I'm sure. One other thing, I was remiss to not mention this earlier, hashtag FE Talk. If you have anything to add over the course of the next 50 minutes or so to our discussion, maybe about technology and its impact on your fire department organization, or some questions that you want to ask to our guest today, Brian Kazmierzak, or any of the other panelists, please feel free to do so on social media with hashtag FE Talk. So we'll kind of start to move into the topic that we were going to discuss today. And I think the easiest thing to do is first just kind of go down the line a little bit, and we'll get Brian as well for the introduction. And we'll just kind of introduce yourself for those of you that are maybe tuning in that don't know some of these familiar faces on here, and introduce yourself and briefly kind of the 5-cent version of what technology is used within your organization right now. And then we'll kind of build on that as we go throughout the course of the next hour. In my case, I guess I'll go ahead and start. We do use a learning management system. We just so happen to use, Target Solutions. There are plenty out there. I don't have any particular affiliation to any one, but there are various learning management systems out there. A lot of great stuff. Different organizations have different things. But we do use a learning management system for certain things. I'll talk a little bit more maybe later about some of the goods and the bads that come along with having a lot of your training based in a learning management system. There are a lot of great opportunities there, but certainly something that can never replace the in-person dynamic back and forth stuff that comes with hands-on training, and even with regular cognitive training, not necessarily just psychomotor and hands-on stuff, but even the in-person type of cognitive training is important to get some of that in an interpersonal way as well. But we do have a learning management system that we use. Outside of that, not really an organization that's incorporated much technology onto our drill ground. As far as that kind of thing goes, any of the paneling systems or simulations and whatnot, certainly some areas that I would like to explore as an organization. But as of now, kind of an LMS system is about the extent we go as far as technology goes. So I'll kick it down the line. I'll start with our regular co-host, Erin Heller. Erin, introduce yourself, and then what kind of technology are you using right now?
Well, hey, everybody. I'm Erin Heller. I'm a captain in Hamilton, New Jersey, and FDIC instructor. Have a hot program there, commercial fire ground ops. So get signed up. And I also own a training company called On Scene Training Associates. So in our department, there is not a lot of technology being utilized right now. We really haven't jumped on board with it like we should. We're still doing things kind of station by station. Really, we're a step above slide trays, I think. We're doing a little bit of internet-based things, but not nearly what we need to. So we're in a process of a consolidation of 9 stations, nine companies into one department. That is where we'll see the change in technology. So one of my big goals when I go to FDIC this year is to really research some things and try and bring back some ideas for whoever's going to be the training chiefs, because we still don't even know that. But we are way behind the 8 ball with it. If you looked at us, you would almost say we're a bit archaic. However, the training's getting done, and it is getting done really well. And nothing does replace having that instructor giving you their personal perspective and exactly how we're doing things. So there's goods and bads of it, but we definitely have to step our game up with it. So I'm here to learn it as much as I am to share.
Outstanding. I kind of feel the same way. Steve Shaw.
Good afternoon. Steve Shaw here. I'm the Battalion Chief of Training and Special Operations for Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, a proud FSI member, and I'm the chair of the Training and Education Subcommittee for Broward County. On the technology front, we just went over to Target Solutions as our new LMS, and we're doing a couple other things technology-wise, but for the most part, and I don't want to say too much because I know everybody else wants to talk here, and I definitely want to hear from Brian. But what I will say is something that I think of quite frequently, that kind of I dwell on a lot, is the concept of kind of like you were talking about, where you have this LMS, it's got great content in there, but you can't let the the hands-on portion go. So for me, I'm constantly reminded of people always saying to me from other departments that have had other LMSs before, their primary complaint is, all we do is online training. That's the primary complaint I hear. All we do is online training. I think about that a lot, and I make sure that I do my darndest to make sure that the backbone of our organization and training is hands-on, supplemented by the learning management system, supplemented by the online stuff. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to listen in.
All right, excellent. Kaz, you got vibrate on that thing? What's the?
Yeah, it's on now.
Tony Carroll.
Hey guys, Tony Carroll here, Battalion Fire Chief with Washington D.C. A volunteer member, local here, but also ISFSI Eastern Region Director. As far as technology goes, we have a couple of we have some EMS simulation stuff. It's really good, and we need to invest in that some more. We have a learning management system. We have we've dipped a little bit into simulations, fire simulations with Digital Combustion Fire Studio. Haven't seen that through to realize its full potential. In fact, we did do several years ago. We had a CTC. It's kind of gone to the wayside. So hopefully we'll be doing some more simulations here soon. I can see there's been a lot of call for that because again, we're not getting as much OJT as we used to, and it's tough to replicate high-rise fires, right? Again, we need to get. There may be companies out here that don't go to any high-rise fires, so the best way to introduce them to that would be through a simulation. We could, and we can do it, and it's safe and it's repeatable. So I think we're going to see some more. Some more technology in with that. But with the LMS, we really haven't realized its full potential either. There's a lot of things that we can do with it that we need to do more with. But that's, we have a lot of technology. Fortunately, we're still doing a lot of hands-on too, because you're right. We need to make sure we have a balance.
So, Kaz, I want to go to you and introduce the folks and introduce yourself to the folks and kind of tell them a little bit about your background. We had Chief Kazmierzak on today as a result of some training that he does. This is really one of the areas that he really specializes in, and he's a fantastic subject matter expert for us today. So, Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's go ahead and springboard into it here. As far as simulations go, that seemed to be one of the things that was talked about by several of the co-hosts here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and talk to us about some best practices for simulations and command training centers and things like that. Some of the successes you had in that arena.
Sure. So my name is Brian Kazmierzak. I'm the first vice president of the ISFSI. Been involved with the board now for a while. Also a battalion chief in Penn Township, Indiana, just outside of South Bend and the University of Notre Dame. When we start talking technology, it's one of the things that I think kind of scare people in the fire service. It's one of those things that sometimes, and we've heard already some of the horror stories, there's too much online training. And I think that's one of the key things with a learning management system is, remember, it is a management system. It is not a teaching system. So, none of these things are going to replace skills on the fire ground or skills on the drill ground. So I think that's the number one thing we have to cover right off the bat. As far as simulation technology, I've been involved, I think, since Fire Studio 3, and now they're on Fire Studio 6. So 4 editions of that, and I've been involved with the Sims You Share product since it came out, as an app on our phones, and now is cross-platform. And it's amazing stuff that you can do with it, but there's some rules behind it. And some of the rules that we've always lived by with it is it's not drown the clown. So you could put the busload of hemophiliac children into the glass truck, type scenario together, and it doesn't matter if you're Alan Brunacini, you're going to fail that simulation. So it's not drown the clown, and nobody leaves doing simulation training until you do it correctly. We don't want to leave training scars on you. So if for some reason, you're running an incident command simulation and it goes south, you stop about it, or you stop the simulation, you talk about it, and then you go do it correctly. So you have the correct imprint in the slide tray in your head is kind of what we're getting at with it. In simulation is really, there's a whole bunch of different ones out there. And, I mentioned two that I use. There's a lot of other ones, but I think the third rule of it is it's not a video game. And if anybody comes to your command training center or doing the simulation training and they think it's playing Xbox, it's not. We're using it to drive decision making is what we're really trying to do with it. So it's not a toy. It's nothing like that. So, Tony mentioned EMS simulation. That's kind of the newest piece, I think, that's out there. The EMS simulators in our state has an ambulance that goes around with them. And then we were in Orland last year for our conference and got to see some of them. But they are extremely high fidelity to where we can duplicate a lot of things in an EMS simulator that we never can duplicate in the field and be very, very close to realism with them.
Brian, do you have any notable success stories, situations where maybe some of your personnel or at your own organization or folks that you've interacted with have said, hey, that went a whole lot smoother because of XYZ training event that we had or something like that? Any positive feedback from some of
Yeah, honestly, we've been doing command training in our entire county for over 10 years. And we started with the blue card system and have done some other things with command training since. And it's really good. And you can tell on the radio just who's been through the command simulator and who hasn't. And really what we did is we used it to get our entire county on the same page. We have a county-wide ops manual where everybody plays by the same set of rules on the fire ground. And we've used that to drive the training, to drive simulations from the ops manual to help with the incident command stuff on the fire ground. I would say our biggest success, and I don't have a fire ground success to tie to it, but I can tell you we had what we thought was a really nice Mayday policy on paper, and we tested it in the command training center, and it fell apart. And then so it took us about 2 years of working through a Mayday policy of command training simulations, hands-on simulations, to where I think now have a very realistic Mayday policy based on training.
Outstanding. Chief Halton, I want to kick it back to you. What are some of your initial thoughts on technology and fire training, and what's throughout the course of your career, what you've seen that works well with integrating new technology and maybe some that haven't?
Well, before we began, I shared with the group, I put it away, I could pull it out, the classroom outline for my 1996 presentation at FDIC on developing an incident simulation program. And I thought that was kind of cute. When you think that the blue card program wasn't formalized into a business until 2007. So it was 11 years before that we were doing, how to build one. Because we've been using one in my organization, Albuquerque, for about 5 years before we went out and did that. We started doing simulations back there in like 1990, maybe 1988, and that was after we'd been doing, and they're nothing new. If you pull out Dick Sylvia's book, there's a really cool book called Fireground Tactics by a guy named Dick Sylvia, and Dick Sylvia was a guy who wrote prolifically in the 50s and 60s. And anyway, Dick was editor-in-chief of fire engineering for a while. But Dick wrote a book called Fireground Tactics, and the back of the book is nothing but simulations. Now, they're pencil and paper simulations, but you could draw them on a chalkboard and run people through them. And what folks often forget, and technology is a beautiful thing, and it's great, and more vivid mental models are important, but there's nothing more vivid than the human imagination. And when you can engage people and get them to think, we think in pictures. So you can create pictures with words, you can create pictures with getting folks to emote. So high-end simulation programs are fantastic. I'm a big fan of all the ones that have been mentioned, whether it's DigiCombustion, whether it's SimsUShare, all of them are fantastic. And I think they're incredibly valuable. Today, we're seeing that technological evolution go even to the next step, where we're talking about people wearing, like the Quake technology people, where you can put on a helmet and we can actually recreate fireground simulations that we can actually manipulate in real time and drive. The FLIR people are doing it. There, Paul Spiglett, who'll be teaching at FDIC, he's got an incredible program. Our good friends at Darley are working with some folks and doing an incredible high-end simulation stuff. And this is the kind of stuff that they're doing in the United States military today. You know, I brag endlessly about my son, the lieutenant commander, who has, and over the course of my short life so far, I've been able to utilize several military simulators. And when you see where they're at today, it's just amazing. And so that technology is going to get more and more affordable. It's going to come more and more down into the general population, which is us. And we'll be the first people to benefit from that technology transfer from the military to us. So that being said, you know, if you're watching this broadcast, write down Quake Technologies. Google Quake Technologies and see what they're building. Now, that's a technology that not only is useful in training, but you can take that out into the real world. And they've got a headset that they're building that what it does with a thermal image, like we have our thermal imagers, it does what's called object recognition. So it outlines what you're looking at. So a window becomes a window, a couch becomes a couch, a chair becomes a chair, or an outline of a chair. And what that does for us, it reduces the cognitive load on our brains so that we have more bandwidth open to make decisions, because we use a certain amount of our bandwidth, our brain power, to interpret what we're seeing in a thermal imager. That's a piece of technology that's going to be commonplace in 5 years, that as trainers, the men and women listening to this program in particular, need to be acutely aware of. One of the things that we were caught off guard by in my generation was we got things like PPV fans, which is a piece of technology. And we kind of learned as we went along with them, rather than having really bright minds like the men and women that are listening to us today and are on in the IFSI and other organizations, kind of messing with them and coming up with some parameters, right? Thermal imaging is another great example. If you look at the good work by Andy Starnes and others who are now, you know, getting us deeper into what we can do with thermal imager, and a lot of it's just going to be evolutionary. We're going to grow. We're going to learn. There's nothing like application. And remember, you know, it's so bizarre today where people go, oh, they just want to simulate. No, nobody's that stupid, for God's sakes. You can go online and watch somebody tie a shoelace all day long. But if you're a 4-year-old kid, you got to tie the goddamn shoelace, all right? And you got to tie it over and over and over again. And then when you get to be my age, you buy Velcro. So get over yourselves. Nobody in this conversation is saying we're going to do away with drill towers or we're going to stop making you carry ladders. And if you're that freaking stupid, go back to Twitter and continue pounding your chest because you're a moron. So, and I use that word descriptively. And so that's not what this conversation's about. But if you're ignoring the opportunity to look at additional tools, you're a fool. I mean, man, you know, the greatest tradition in the American fire service has been our ability to keep pace with this socio-technical interface, whether it was the introduction of steam, whether it was the introduction of motor apparatus, whether it was the introduction of better PPE, whether it was the introduction of thermal imaging, blah, 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 better communications. Our tradition is the ability to adapt, innovate, and keep pace with the issues that are facing the people we swore to protect. It's all about them. It ain't about us, stupid. It's about the people we serve. And if we're not using the very best educational tools, if we're not using the very best technological tools, if we're not getting ahead, then we're not doing what we swore to do, because they are. I got a good buddy who just drove through 2 days ago in his new Tesla, going back home to Tennessee where he lives, in his new Tesla. What do you know about Teslas? Pay attention, boys and girls, because they have accidents, right? You can ignore it all you want. They have accidents. But that does not negate the fact that if you don't know how to use a Halligan and a flathead, you're an idiot. And it doesn't negate the fact that if you don't know how to use gravity to help you move a 2.5 or an 1 3/4 or how to position yourself correctly when you're moving down a hallway or when you're moving up a flight of stairs, then you've missed the point. No technology and all this IA stuff, it is going to take generations before they can build a computer that's as smart as freaking Kaz. And that's setting the bar pretty damn low. I'm just teasing you, Kaz. But you know what I mean? The human mind is so freaking advanced. Right now, there's parts of the human brain that have more neural connections than there are elements in the universe that we know about. That's some pretty important stuff there, cowboys. And we don't even know how they interact. So the ability of the human mind is just incomprehensible in its scope and dimension. All the technology in the world is never going to replace that, but it can help us make better decisions. And so the stuff I would say to look at, the Quake Technologies people, look at these high-end simulation folks, but never forget that if you've got a Halligan that's in 3 pieces, you're Homer Simpson. If it's not a 1-piece Halligan, throw it away. You know, there's nothing less common than common sense, and technology is not going to outpace that. The other thing to remember, and this is critical as we talk about technology, and I'll shut up, all that technology allows us to do is find new ways to fail. With every new piece of technology we bring into the system, it's something else that can go catastrophically wrong or fail us at the worst possible time. So never, ever, ever abandon the basics. Never, ever believe, as we did foolishly back in the 70s, that because we had sprinklered buildings, that we could have less protected stairwells. Bad idea. Think of the towers in the name escapes me in England. Bad idea. You know, you cannot, geometry will not beat mass ever. Mass wins. And think of that in training too. You gotta be able to do the damn job. And we're never, and the folks in Boston Technologies is never going to build a dog that can fight fire as good as Erin Heller. Sorry.
I agree. And Erin, why don't you finish up our discussion on simulations? Any good or bad events in your own career related to simulations?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish we had better training with simulations, you know, honestly, 20 some years ago, because I can tell you, here's just a quick story that goes with that. Bobby talked about with tick simulations. When we got thermal imagers in the fire service, it was a brand new thing to us, and the training was very, very archaic. There was nothing there to it. It was here's the tool. How do you turn it on? If it's this color, if it's this color, gray or white, it's this. You know, we really didn't get much training with it. The first work in fire I took a thermal imager into was nice. The first fire I took a tick into, we crawled down a hallway, and I thought I found a dog. Right, nice big dog right there in the hallway. Well, it was glowing perfectly the way that the salesman told me a human body would show up in the tick. And when I grabbed this thing, it was stiff as a board, and I thought, Jesus, it's still sitting up. It looks fine. It was a statue of their dog. It wasn't their dog. But I didn't recognize that because I hadn't been trained to that level, and I had never really used this tick other than in the engine room looking for down fireman type thing. So having a simulation of this type, and just that's a very, you know, rough estimation of it, but having a simulation exactly like Bobby and his bear over here. Only Bobby would have a wood carved bear in his office.
That bear may be saved at his next house fire.
Exactly. But that was my point was, you know, I wasted time grabbing this thing and starting to drag it and realized, oh crap, that's not, you know. So the point of it is having these simulations leads to fireground success. I do believe it. It never will replace a down and dirty firefighting job. That part of training has to exist. Anybody that, you know, I've seen that where guys get on the technology train and they forget all about the rest of what we do. This is a great thing to marry with our down and dirty training and our street smart training and the stuff that we do at FDIC and that we do around the country and that we do in our engine rooms and in the parking lot of the firehouse. So that was kind of my quick story.
Yeah, no, I think Bobby's done. He's just going to leave the bear.
I think, yeah, we're cool with the bear. He's a handsome guy. So, and the other thing he talked about, and just because Bobby said it, he talked about the Tesla. There's a great FDIC class this year, not on Tesla extrication, because I know somebody's doing some of that stuff, but on battery technology and fighting those types of fires. Carl Haddon is doing a class on that this year in Indy, and he's done a tremendous amount of training. Just another option out there for you. So.
All right, very good. So some good discussion about, we're going to get the real Bobby back. But anyway, just some good discussion there about simulations and things like that. We could go on for hours with that, but we'll shift gears here a little bit. Just one quick reminder, since we're close to the bottom of the hour and halfway through, keep in mind #FETalk if you're following along on social media, and they'll kick some of those questions to us. So I want to shift gears here a little bit and get into some discussion about ways to simulate fire on the drill ground, whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing. Certainly, we've all been involved in trainings over the years that use, just kind of fake smoke, candy smoke, theatrical smoke, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, sometimes the heat element is not there if we're just doing things under smoke conditions. The good thing, I suppose, is probably a decreased carcinogen exposure and things along those lines, which could be good. Obviously, we know that there are issues there, but there's realism issues. There's issues where we train a certain way on the drill ground, and then that doesn't always necessarily work on the actual fire ground, right, in terms of water application and the fire loading involved in 1403 compliant burns and things like that. One of the new things that has come on the scene over the past several years that I've had the opportunity to be involved with through a few different training avenues is some of those digital fire panels. And initially, I will absolutely be the first one to admit that initially, when I would start to see those things on the show floor at events and things like that, I'm thinking, you got to be kidding. Like, this is the death of fire training here. This is insane. Why, how possibly could they ever actually do that? But I'll tell you, once I had the opportunity to be involved in some of the training related to those things, I was kind of a convert a little bit. I think that there's some worth there to be able to have some of those panels that create a visible look to a fire condition, that kind of create a glow in the ceiling in conjunction with a fair amount of theatrical smoke, as well as, audibly the sound of fire crackling and things like that. What I found through working with some of those props is that you can, minus the heat condition, unless you somehow are piping heat in there from a separate source, minus the heat condition, you can actually create a somewhat realistic fire condition to where arguably, and this may sound strange and people may fall out of their chairs when I say this, but in a way, even more realistic than Class A combustible live fire. And what I mean by that is, when you have very good visibility with just 3 or 4 pallets going in the corner of a concrete burn room, yes, you have that heat. Yes, you have some real fire. But what you oftentimes lack is the decrease in visibility that comes with real fires. And by using some of that theatrical smoke piped in very thick, and some of those panels that create that kind of distant glow up in the ceiling, and that audible cue of hearing that, and that prompting water application and things like that, I found that there actually is a significant amount of realism that you can create there with those, minus maybe the heat factor in some circumstances. So I preface this conversation by saying that I kind of came into the idea of some of those digital fire panels with a huge eye roll. But what I've found is that there is some value there. And so I want to ask the panelists who's had success with those and what your experiences have been and thoughts about them. So, Kaz, let's start with you, brother.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to be as nice as you were about your first opinion of them. I honestly saw them, and I apologize to Ray and the guys at Lion Bullocks ahead of time, but I saw them and I laughed and I was like, this is insane. Why are we even doing this? And then, like you, I got to experiment with them in doing some of our hot training that we've done with ISFSI and some other drills, and there's a time and a place for them, and especially in an acquired structure where you can't do live fire, you can't flow water. They definitely allow you some additional realism there. Or even if you can't do live fire, but you can flow water, I should have said. But we've used them in some of the ISFSI stuff very, very successfully. To see Pete Van Dorp teach with them, here you got a seasoned Chicago firefighter veteran that's embraced the use of technology in one of his sessions that you and him teach together, Brad. So I think there's a time and a place. It will never replace crawling a hallway in a dark, smoky, hot building, but it does give us another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, I agree. Can I jump in real quick? I mean, same thing, right? It takes so much, and we've done it to ourselves, right? 1403 and things like that. We have to have a cadre of instructors there to do a live fire burn. And for us, right, that would be we're going to do one next Monday. We're going to do a live fire next Monday. So now I gotta plan that out, get all the people, and ultimately, right, I don't know how many fires we're going to get out of that, because I gotta build it, I gotta pull it all out, overhaul it, and then stack it up again. And I gotta be done earlier that day to clean everything up. With this, I can turn it on with one person, right? I don't need 10 people to meet the 1403. I turn it on and I have sets and reps. I'm not replacing my burn week or all of my live fire, but I'm definitely gonna get the sets and reps. We have a gas-fired burn building, in addition to a Class A fire burn building. Unfortunately, it's not working, and I think we could really gain something out of that. It's not the fire panels, but again, it's something that I can do quick. I can turn it on. I don't have all the regulations that we have with 1403, and I can get my rookies stretching line, pulling the line back out, repacking, stretch a line, pulling the line back out, and I don't have all the requirements to meet with the 1403. The live fire or the fire panels, yeah, I exposed to that in when we were in Chicago out in Tenley Park, and I again balked at it. This isn't going to be good, but it turned out to be a pretty valuable resource, and I would add that to my fire training. Again, it's not going to replace, but I would add that so that I get that I get sets and reps. I get something they are shooting at. They're not shooting at a cone; they're shooting at a fire panel.
Absolutely. And you can program the difficulty of those to where you have to apply a significant amount of water, right? And that's one of the things. There you go, a little wall ceiling wall action, Tony. But we, when all we're doing is going in and a couple of squirts on those 3 pallets knocks those down, arguably that's that whole discussion about setting up for failure, right, on the real fire ground. And so by increasing the amount of water that you have to spray, and then you can vary those on some of those digital simulator and those fire panels, in a way kind of makes us adds a little bit of a safety factor there. Steve Shaw, what about down any exposure to those down in Fort Lauderdale? Are you using those?
I've seen those around this neck of the woods, to be quite honest. I'm actually fascinated by them, and I'm definitely wanting to see how they play out. I would love to incorporate them into our training program to see how they function. But I will tell you, I'm on the same vein as Tony. He said time and a place. He's absolutely right. All these tools in the toolbox, all these have their time and a place. I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, what are you trying to accomplish with what you're doing? Yeah, I love it. When we go to the fire academy, we love to have like the triple. We have the flashover simulator, a good Class A prop, whether it's a bunch of Connex boxes or whatever put together, plus the propane fed building. You get the 3 different options. You get 3 different types of drills you're doing, but it's what are you doing out there? The flashover simulator, simulating heat, watching fire growth, talking about things while you're watching that go. The Class A combustible building or the Class A building is getting you more of that realism there for the most part. But I get what you're saying, and Tony, I'm gonna probably just parrot a lot of what you just said. There's a time and a place for things. He's right, Tony. I feel your pain, man. When you're trying to put together those programs, especially with acquired structures, oh my God, it's a logistical nightmare. Now, granted, they're probably the best trainings we can give our folk out there, but my God, the work going into those things is immense. So I actually would love to give those a try, especially putting those together with like propane fed structures, because I've had some bad experiences with the propane buildings, to be quite honest. I'm trying to run a drill, make it as realistic as possible. I'm watching the smoke dissipate. I'm watching the flames go out when they're not supposed to. We're trying to coordinate with the person operating the panel. Very annoying. I see their value. And if your purpose is to stretch lines, work together as a team, all that kind of jazz, do experiments with 1.75" versus 2.5" versus 2" hose. If the purpose is there for what you're trying to accomplish, cool. But yeah, I think there's a time and a place. And like I said, I like to have the options. So when I go out and do stuff, especially if I'm using an academy, I like to have those options out there and just kind of tailor what we're doing based on the structures that are available to us.
Absolutely, good stuff. Erin, any interaction with any of these panels?
Yeah, first time. Yeah, it's funny. Just like Brian said, I saw it at FDIC or one of the shows, and I looked at it and went, "Oh, you got to be effing kidding me, man! What are they doing to us?" But I got the chance to operate with one a couple of years ago in Thibodaux, Louisiana, and we were doing a RIP program for them. And they said, "Hey, we've got this. We use it for this, this, and this." And they weren't really utilizing it to its full potential. And EJ Mascaro was leading that part of the program. And EJ said, "I want to put this in there in this barn that we had set up with a collapse scenario and a maze and everything else." And he goes, "That's what we're going to use as our fire. Since we can't use fire, we use that in a smoke machine." And it really did heighten up the RIT scenario, because you had the noise of fire crackling. We made them stretch a line in and protect, quote unquote, the RIT team that was working to remove the downed firefighter. So it really did add a much different level to what we were normally doing, but it was a safe level for us. We didn't need to be in there on SCBA. We had great vision as far as instructors go, and the students still got a better effect. So it was one of those places we couldn't do a live fire. Obviously, we were working in someone's barn, but it worked out really well, and it augmented what we did. So there's absolutely a place for these things. It's just a matter of like the other guy said, we're adding a little piece to the pie. We're not really replacing something else. We're just adding some more to it. So I think as long as you keep it in that vein, it's cool stuff. It's just like the props that we're building for FDIC and all these other things that they're just going to augment your training. They're not taking anything away from what we already did, but they're augmenting it. And I like it. I mean, if my department finds the money for one, I would absolutely buy one if I can find a way and where.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brian, actually, I'm going to kick it back to you anyway, Brian. We got about 10 minutes left or so. What else? We've talked a little bit about the simulators. We've talked a little bit about computer simulations, the fire panel simulations, a little bit about LMS. What are some of your other thoughts on this, and what else do you think is important in technology and training?
Well, I want to go back to something Erin just said, because it really it talks about all of these technology items that we're doing. Augment your training. So, and we started today right from the get-go with talking that you can't replace the hands-on drill ground, and that's so true. So whether it's the LMS and learning management system, if anybody thinks that is your virtual training officer, you're wrong. All that does is give you a place to house training, gives you a place to log training. And I use it to flip the classroom. I use it so my people spend more time on the drill ground. They can watch a video in the LMS on how to do it, and then they go out and put their skills to work on the drill ground doing it. If anybody's just sitting in front of the computer, click, 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 there's not a lot you can take away from that. Now, we do that with our bloodborne pathogen and our OSHA classes that you have to by law every year do. But, I always tell people I can sum up bloodborne pathogens in one sentence. If it's wet and it's not yours, don't touch it. I don't need to do an hour program, but OSHA requires that. So, when you go along those lines, some of the, other training stuff that's out there technology wise is something as simple as Dropbox, being able to share all your material throughout your entire department. I use Dropbox with everything. Every one of my devices has Dropbox on it, which means my phone, my computer, my laptop, my iPad. So it doesn't matter where I'm at, I can get to my training program. And then you can share it, throughout your organization. You can lock it down so people can only view versus, edit files, those type of things. For something as inexpensive as $99 a year that you can use to have pretty much unlimited storage, it's a pretty awesome thing that's not meant for training. It's document storage, but that's a lot of what we do is document management on the training end of things, and managing lesson plans and managing PowerPoints, videos, those type of things. Videos is another one. YouTube, I think, is one of the best training things out there, and it's free. You can do tons of simulation-based training just on YouTube. Look at how many fires Dave Statter puts up on his website every day, or how many people post different fires on Statter 911 or wherever it may be. Look at the stuff that we can get out of those, being able to use it. I love the pre-arrival ones. So those are always the ones that catch my eye. If it says pre-arrival, meaning, hey, we haven't put any action onto this yet. So that way we can really have some good discussion. What will you do when you get here type stuff. Just having a good video downloader so you can take that stuff and insert it in your PowerPoint presentations. And that I like to use Applin Technologies Replay Media Catcher. It's like $29 for that. There's some free ones on Mozilla that you can use to download YouTube and with Firefox. And so just little things like that. And, really this hour session just literally scratches the surface, because there's so many more things out there technology-wise that we're not even remotely talking about today.
So, Kaz, I'm going to kick it back to you, because I want you to expand a little bit more on the whole flipped classroom thing. You talked about that and using LMS for flipped classroom, and you oftentimes speak about that. It obviously gets us more time on the drill ground, but have you noticed any difference in the retention of the students when they're getting it ahead of time? Because, of course, you don't know what they're, are they really paying attention when they're doing it at home, or are they not, versus when they're kind of a captive audience in class. Have you had mostly success with that flip training concept?
Yeah, I can't think of a lot of negatives out of it, honestly. And just to define the flipped classroom for those of you that aren't involved with it or haven't heard of it, it was really the Khan Academy model. That's what, if you've ever watched the 60 Minutes episode that talks about the Khan Academy and how it's changed education. My own children have used Khan Academy extensively, especially in math, to where you have a video that shows you how to do it, and then you spend the rest of your time actually doing it. And what's nice with the video is you can go back, watch it, figure out how to do it. If I miss something, I go back to it again and watch it until I get it right. And I think that's the big key to this is we want everything we do, we want it done right. So if I can, instead of me showing at one time how to do it on the fire ground and you trying to parrot it back, you can watch that video 20 times ahead of time. And if you think you're going to have difficulty with different steps, the nice part is too, you can get to those videos on your phone. So if you're on the drill ground, you can go and watch the video even. So I like the duplication piece of it.
Great stuff. So as we slowly start to finish up here with our last several minutes, let's just go down the line with some final thoughts on what we've talked about today, or anything that's been sticking in your head that you want to chat about before we get out of here. Chief Halton, let's start with you.
Well, I think what's really important is that obviously this is a group of elegant trainers, and they understand that using some of the technological stuff that replaces live fire is critically important when we're teaching people who have no experience, right? You don't take a kid out and throw them on a major league ball field and throw pitches to them at 90 miles an hour to teach them how to bat. You put the ball on a stand and you take a nice soft bat, and then over time you develop that person's skill set to where they can get in the batter's box and take a pitch, right? So it's the same thing in firefighting. But also on the same wavelength is that if we look at something like that simulator, and Tony said it much better than I ever could, it's sets and reps, right? It's being able to go, set it up, do it again, do it again, do it again. I had the opportunity to work with the folks at Affordable Drill Tower, which is a really kind of a neat technology piece, right? Doesn't sound like it, but these folks build these incredible towers out of scaffolding material. And when you're training people to do something, the cool advantage is you can see them all the time. They never leave your eyesight, right? So, and you could incorporate all kinds of technology in there. You could have blast masks put on them, which, black out. You could have the fellow who built the thing that gives you the resistance on your face piece, or it's, so they could feel like they were breathing air. You could have them do hose line movement. You could use panels to check their flow rate. And all of that could be done on, say, an Affordable Drill Tower with one of these pieces of technology to where you can see everything they're doing. So you could help them with their body position. You could help them with their with different elements of their evolution, so that you never lose sight of that trainee. So although it's not a drill tower with live fire, recreating how real fire is, yeah, they're not ready for that. And so it's a really cool opportunity for us to, and you are elegant, you jackwagon. I can't believe Kaz is giving me a hard time in our little private chat box here. You are an elegant individual at certain times, but only at certain times. So anyway, you know, we always have to think about the whole picture, right? Like when a person like Brian Kazmierzak or Erin Heller or Steve Shaw or, you know, any man or woman at Tony Carroll are talking about training, you have to understand that their vision of training is cradle to grave. You know, oftentimes when we think about it, we're just thinking about where we're at, right? And we forget that, you know, a man like Tony Carroll is training some of the most effective, efficient, and highly skilled firefighters in the world who are protecting some of the most important infrastructure in the world and some of the most important people in the world. And how he approaches that has to be so dynamic, so inclusive, so far-reaching that it staggers the imagination that he's able to do it with the degree of efficiency and proficiency that he does, right? And the fact that he takes people from cradle to grave, from knowing which end of the hose water comes out of, to being able to do the types of work that they do, making it seem to be so easy when it's so nuanced and so skilled, is just amazing. So to me, you know, this group in particular, to be able to talk about technology and every kind of technology, right? We have to remember that technology is everything. And I made a joke earlier about the Halligan tool, but that's a piece of technology, and how it's built is important, right? And how it's used is important. Great piece by Champo coming out in March about the Rabbit tool and other hydraulic tools that we can use for forcible entry. That's technology. You know, technology is not just computers and LMSs and stuff in the cloud. It's everything from can openers, man, to computers. And you got to wrap your head around that when you're talking about our gig, because our gig uses it all. And you better be smart enough to understand that. And what's a blessing to me, and I know we have to wrap up, is to know that men and women like you are out there and care enough to forego being wealthy and forego being famous, as many people with your skill sets would do, and rather have chosen to put themselves into an environment where the chances of success are often limited, but nonetheless show up and do your very best and risk it all to be successful. And that's the hallmark of an American. And I don't care what anybody says. I'm a absolute patriot nationalist. I think America is the greatest country in the world. I think if it wasn't for America, the whole world would be a shithole. And America has made it better, and always has made it better, and always will make it better. But the epitome of American exceptionalism is the American firefighter. And if you don't get that, then I can't help you. So just crawl back under that freaking postmodernist rock you live under and continue to groom your man bun. But if you do get it, God bless you.
I don't really know how we could finish up any better than that. Does any of the other panelists any closing words today? All right.
I think the meds are kicking in.
Let me put a bid in for the EMS Today conference. Again, if you're coming to EMS Today, we're doing a reception in DC. We're going to take you down to our fancy new waterfront. So I know we're going to have a bus. The mayor, fire chief are both inviting people to come to that. So if you're going to be in town, please think about spending one of your nights with our reception. So
Tony and I will be there. I've invited Dennis O'Neill and Keith Bryant from the U.S. Fire Administration. I've also invited a couple of other guests who said if they can clear their calendar, they're going to be there. These are people that are, please come and talk to these folks. These are folks that are really out there. Oh, and by the way, anybody who's in a rural area, and all you training guys, you should know this. There was a bill that was just passed, and it's called the, oh, for the love of God, I'm old. Go to our grant site, grantready.com, there's a grant for EMS training. So you can actually use this grant to send your people to this training or other training. And it's specifically for EMS training that was just passed. I think it's called the Siren Act. Siren, like siren, the Siren Act. I believe that's the correct title. But it just passed. Please afford yourselves the opportunity. All of the organizations listening today should be taking advantage of that opportunity. You'd be amazed how much grant money doesn't get utilized, and it's available. We have a guy that works for us. If you go to fireengineering.com, look, do Grant Ready. Dave Hasselmeyer and his team will help you access that grant monies for training. So, sorry.
No, outstanding. I appreciate everybody being on today, everybody tuning in out there. Make sure you join us again first Wednesday of next month. We're going to go ahead and do our official FDIC preview episode. And so that's very, very exciting as we get ready for FDIC in early April. So anyway, for Erin Heller and Bobby Halton and Steve Shaw and Brian Kazmierzak and Tony Carroll, I'm Brad French, and I appreciate you tuning in. Have a great day.